Welcome to the Marketing Revolution podcast. This is the underground movement of savage marketers from all over the world. We are not Fortune 500 companies. We are real entrepreneurs with real businesses that have one major thing in mind: to set goals and devour them daily. Because we understand that everyone wants to eat, but only savage marketers are willing to do the hunt. Now let's get this revolution started.
Hey, what's up, everybody? John Hiley here with the Marketing Revolution podcast and the Marketing Savage Facebook group. Hope you guys are having an amazing Saturday. And I'm chilling here with my co-host with the most, who likes peanut butter and jelly toast, Hiley Angela.
Thank you very much, sir.
She's always afraid I'm going to forget her. She's always gazing at me like as I'm doing the intro. Is he going to forget me this time? And then there was one time we got halfway through the podcast and she started claiming that I forgot to introduce her. And when we went and replayed it, guess what? I didn't forget.
Shit happens sometimes.
She what she has is she has a fear of
I don't have FOMO.
You have fear of take my sparkle syndrome.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, so she has a fear that I'm trying to take her sparkle all the time.
You know what? I was listening to the one podcast that you did with Tom Ziegler. And
Tom, my Ziegler.
Yeah, and you were talking about
Big T.
I like how you do the whole torch thing, but I was thinking, I'm like, did he kind of like get my whole thing that I told him about how I like to do this whole sparkle thing, and then he just kind of did.
What the hell does a torch have to do with a sparkle? Do torches sparkle?
Well, no, I'm talking about me.
Does a flame sparkle?
No, what I was thinking is like, you heard my whole jam about my sparkle thing, and then you're like, she's got something good going here. Now I need to like figure out something that's going to be more manly.
Like a motherfucking torch.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So, but no, I did not steal your sparkle. That's what you're just basically breaking down.
Listen.
I was talking about her, like me stealing her sparkle, and she broke it down like I actually stole it.
No, what I was saying is that you heard my theory about spreading sparkle and, making everything all happy and go lucky. And I was just wondering if maybe that might have inspired you a little bit and you came up with your torch thing.
No, I don't want to make any of you men jealous out there, but I went and bought this little lady a kitchen table here a little while ago.
I know. I'm like super stoked about this.
Yeah, we went into Bob's Furniture.
No, it was not Bob's Furniture.
Well, no, the first place we went into was Bob's Furniture, which I call Bob on my knobs furniture.
Yeah.
Which is connected to the Crackhead furniture store.
Oh my God.
So you got Bob's Furniture, and then you got the Crackhead furniture store, which is right next to it.
These people probably think we're ghetto as hell.
Oh man, it was like such a crackhead store next door to it, wasn't it? The people that were there led.
I don't want to go into that.
So we wouldn't even go into that store, and we couldn't find anything in Bob on my knobs. So we went down the road and found this furniture store. But this salesman, oh my God, he almost ruined it. Like when I go and I just want to buy something, and he wouldn't. Like, he's one of them guys I was sold. I'm like, okay, man, yeah, I'll take it. And he continuously tried to sell me afterwards.
Well, no, I think
like as if I was going to back out at some point during the transaction.
Well, I think he was kind of surprised that
he was shocked that we bought it.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we were in there, he goes, first off, he offered an extra. It was already on sale, and supposedly I couldn't really see the sticker price being the actual fucking sticker price. It's like one of them things where they, you go in there and they just deliberately jack up the price and then mark it down by half just so you feel like you're getting some sort of deal. But he comes over, and without even us asking or saying a word, yep, without even us asking or saying a word, he drops the price even more for us.
Yeah.
And so we're sitting here talking, and we're like, man, shit, like our biggest objection is we're like, got to fly to Dallas next week. We don't want anything delivered. During the time we got to fly out. So he comes back and he says, well, it's going to be 2 weeks for a delivery time. And he just starts going on and on and on about why it's
I
okay.
think he was just listen. He
And
seemed like
he was even talking about how it's going to be delivered on Valentine's week, and I'm like, okay.
Well-
and he just like would not shut up, and that he actually solved an objection. So our objection was, shit, we can't really pick it up. Like we can't have it delivered next week. So they probably ain't going to let us like keep it here or something.
I think what it was.
No.
is-
Let me finish a point. I'm
Oh,
trying to
dear
drive
God.
a point home here. Okay.
All right.
He wouldn't listen. That's the point. If he would have just shut up and listened to me, I would have been like, dude, that's great. If you guys aren't going to get it here for 2 weeks, that's awesome because we fly out to Dallas next week and we're not getting back till the end of the week. So that works out really well for us. But instead, this guy wouldn't shut up. And he almost talked himself out of the sale. This is the equivalent of why salespeople talk themselves out of sales. If I didn't think it was a good deal and I didn't like that table, I probably would have left. Because
Yeah.
he listen, you got one mouth and two ears for a reason. That means you should listen and ask questions and investigate. Not assume that we wanted it right away, right? And he even told us, like, he wouldn't even let me talk enough to say that he was like, I can let you take the chairs home right now. I can let you have the chairs right now. I'm like,
Listen.
dude, I don't want the fucking chairs.
I think what it was is he was a nice guy, but he was just overdoing it. Like he was
When we told him we would take it, he goes, really?
like he was surprised.
He was really surprised that we bought a piece of furniture
I think he
from
was
him.
just trying too hard. That's really what it was.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know?
even at the very end, he was still talking
I
to
felt
me
kind
about.
of bad for him, in all honesty.
I did too. But it's a prime example of why. Okay, so I heard this the other day. A salesman won't shut up and they won't quit talking. A closer listens, talks and listens and probes and finds the problem,
Yeah.
investigate, solves, builds relationships, and allows the client and customer to talk.
Yeah.
You can learn so much just by asking somebody. So, what brings you in here today? Oh, you're looking at kitchen tables. Have you looked anywhere else? Is there anything I can answer for you about any of these? And then just sit back and just shut up.
Yeah.
Let them tell you everything about what they want, what they need.
And give them some space.
Yeah.
Because they're going to buy the whatever they find if they're in there, if they really like it.
You remember that time we were in that furniture store?
Oh, dear God, I knew you were
and
gonna
that
bring
lady
this up.
kept tracking us all over the store.
This was horrible.
This was the worst.
I felt like she was invading my space way too much, and she was like all up in my energy, and I'm
felt
like,
like
you need
we
to get
had
the fuck
to-
away from me.
We felt like we had to sneak by the door and
We
run,
did.
and we did, and run out
We
of there.
had to be ninja in that situation.
And like everywhere you went, it's like we'd be like, is she gone? But then she would be real close.
I know.
She was like always far away, but always close.
Yeah.
But in this real leery way, like she was staring at us from,
I know.
like tracking us down and hiding behind stuff.
That's not
And
how
then
you
at
sell
any moment,
furniture.
just
That's
like
not how you sell
creeping up
anything.
and popping up on us again. Yeah, this guy definitely wasn't that bad. He was one of them.
He was just trying too hard. That's all he was
I mean,
doing.
there's a reason why he's in furniture sales and he's not selling, a Lexus or a fucking Bugatti or
Hey,
something.
you never know. Maybe that might be his dream job one day.
Hey, Drewby was in furniture sales.
So, I mean, hey, you know
Yeah.
what? You got to start
When
somewhere.
I interviewed Drewby on, it wasn't on this podcast, but was it on the podcast? Wait, where is the last place I interviewed Drewby? I cannot remember. I know it was in the group,
Yeah.
but and it may have been on this podcast. If not, I need to get Drewby Wilson on this podcast because he's a fucking closer. And but he started in furniture, but he sold so much damn furniture, he quickly got promoted. Like, people were coming in there buying furniture from him and like offering him a job.
Well, you know what? He's a really nice guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's got really good energy. He doesn't seem like the type of individual that is going to be like the salespeople that we ran into today.
That's what'll happen though, is somebody will run into you if you're really good at sales and you actually learn to master it. I mean, sales is like anything else. You got to learn to master sales
Yeah.
and become a closer. And when you become really good at it, you're not going to have the same job that long because somebody will walk in the door and recognize that. And the world, I would say that's probably one of the most desired professions that there is because they literally not only pay for themselves, but they make you money.
Yeah.
So, a salesman is one person who can step into your organization and literally just make you profitable right off the bat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Drewby's got really good energy too. So, you know, that's like a plus, 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 plus right there.
Well, I mean, if you look at Tony, for instance, Tony Tavares, who was on the podcast the other day,
Double T.
Double T. So if you look at Tony, I mean, that's what they look for. I mean, they look for people that are just have potential to be great salespeople.
Yeah.
Actually, they look just for great people, and they know that they can turn great people into great salespeople.
Yeah.
You know, which is super powerful because they're really hiring on the culture first.
Yeah.
And the type of individual they're going to bring in their organization. And then at that point, what Tony talked about is he has them read Grant Cardone's 10X, which admittedly I have never read. Now I want to read it.
I listen to that podcast too. See, occasionally what I'll do is on my morning walks, I'll listen to either a podcast or I'll listen to my book. And I listen to
You listen to Grant Cardone?
No, what I don't listen. I don't even know who the guy is. So
Well, as soon
some
as
people
I said,
are probably like, "Holy shit!"
As soon
she
as I
doesn't.
said Grant Cardone, you said you listened to that podcast too.
No, what I was referring to is I listened to the podcast that you had Tony on, and then I listened to the podcast that you had Tom Ziegler on.
She's my biggest fan.
Yes, I am your biggest fan and your biggest supporter.
That's right.
I will say one thing though, when you had Tom,
And my baby mama.
that's right.
That's your baby mama.
When you had Tom Ziegler on, one thing that really struck me and it like really stuck with me, and you'll probably know why, is when you guys were talking about depression does not equal happiness. Depression equals purpose.
You mean a depression is not the happiness is not the opposite of depression?
Yeah, but when you guys were saying like depression is the
No, purpose is the opposite of depression.
Yeah, but like, okay, this is where I'm getting at. When I was suffering the depression that I went through, okay, it wasn't like happiness was going to make me better. Like during that state of what I was going through, I was really lost. So when you guys are talking about it and when you were saying purpose, I'm like, that's what it was. Like I didn't know what my purpose was at that moment.
Well, like I said, like happiness is kind of a fleeting emotion.
Well, yeah.
You know, it's up, it's down. I don't think people give enough credit to probably my favorite emotion, and that's just being content.
You're absolutely right.
Just being right there in the middle, feeling good,
Yeah.
feeling content.
Yeah.
I don't have to be smiling and happy like a clown all the time, like I'm being fucking tickled all day long, looking like Tom Cruise jumping on Oprah's couch. I'm alive. I'm alive. You know, I just content, man. You know what I mean? Like content.
That's a good feeling.
You know, that's a purpose. That's where purpose comes from. You get too high on the happy train,
Yeah.
and you walking around like a clown all day long.
Yeah.
And I've been there. Like I've had like euphoric moments in my life where like this massive, like crazy amount of happiness has came over me,
Yeah.
and almost to the point to where it's they actually got something called toxic, not toxic motivation, but what is that? Catherine Tague was actually talking about it. It's almost like a toxic form of happiness, right? Where
Oh.
you act as if you're so happy all the time that it becomes actually toxic to you. Because I truly believe, you know, I truly believe that, you know, the higher you go, the lower you're going to fall. You know what I mean? It's like everything's on that pendulum that always swings back and forth. So the more that you can stay in the middle and stay centered
Yeah.
in life, you're gonna be able to defeat you're not gonna have them big highs and them big lows. And I mean, I've even heard people where I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and he faced addiction with gambling and stuff like that. And one of the things when we were talking about that, because I mean, and I'm not talking about like just regular gambling. I'm talking about like going in the casino and winning $100,000 at a table and then losing $250,000 by the end of the night.
Damn.
And doing things like going into the casino and starting off with like, you know, hey, I'll go back with $5,000, and then next time I won a little, I'm gonna go back with 10, and then next thing you know, you're showing up with $100,000, going to the casino and getting more later on.
Yeah.
And what was happening when I was talking to him about that is that he was getting addicted. He had been on such these big highs. I mean, such these huge emotional highs when he was in there winning
Yeah.
at the casino.
Yeah.
But then what would happen is he would go back a time and he would lose. And then when he lost, this guilt would start sitting in. Things would start coming up in his mind like, dude, you just lost $100,000 last night. You could have bought your mom a new car. You could have paid their house off. You could have, all of these things, you could have done this, you could have done that, all is playing in his head.
Yeah.
But that big high is what brings people back. You know what I mean? Like brings people back or gets you kind of like addicted to that in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a certain a power, I believe, with just being happy with being nice and content.
Mm-hmm.
Staying right there in the middle.
I feel you on that one.
Mm-hmm.
I really do.
So,
but that whole thing, though, the whole purpose thing, like I truly got it, because what had happened was like when John went through
toxic positivity.
Oh, because with my whole depression thing is what had happened is after me and John went through the whole situation, and then after his whole probation thing was like done and over with, like I think what it was is I was in so much of like a survival mode that everything was calming down and getting back to normal. And all of a sudden I was having these episodes like a few times a month where I would get really, really sad and really depressed.
I don't even know if we've actually talked about that on this podcast. I know we revealed it on the Tactical Dent Tech podcast, which is another podcast that we host.
Like I got really, it might get me a little emotional, but it got me really, really, I was suicidal for a while. And that's the first time I've ever said that out in like, besides telling you. But I felt lost. Like for some reason, like I felt like I didn't have a purpose in life. Even though there was like all this good stuff. My face is probably getting red because this is uncomfortable to talk about. But
don't worry. Everybody knows our podcast is a roller coaster. We'll be laughing about something in about 20 minutes, by the way.
Yeah, but it was like I felt really lost, and I've never felt that in my entire life. And for a while, I didn't tell John about it. And then I listened to a book called Fuck Depression, and it helped me out quite a bit. I became really honest with myself. I told John everything that I was feeling and what I was going through. And what helped me out the most, because my biggest thing is I already have to take medicine for anxiety, and I didn't want my doctor putting me on some type of antidepressant. Now, if it didn't, how do I say, like if it didn't get better, then of course I would have went down that route. But I'm not a person that really likes to take a lot of pharmaceutical drugs. So when I got honest with myself about the whole situation, instead of denying it, thinking that it was just going to go away, because it didn't go away, and then I was honest with John about it, I, of course, with my faith, I prayed a lot. I asked God to help me with it, and I threw myself into like motivational books, and I really started walking a lot. And I would say John and I got into some silly argument, and just a silly, stupid argument. And the interesting thing was, after that silly, stupid argument that we got into, it kind of like faded away into the background.
Okay, so I got to tell you what this argument was about.
Oh,
I got to tell you guys what this argument was about.
But wait a minute, just let me finish,
All right.
and then I'll let you go into it.
Oh my God, you guys are gonna laugh your ass off.
Here's the thing, though: this silly little argument made me realize, because there was a book that I was listening to, and I was like, "Holy fucking shit, this is so true." It's like God will put you in a situation. And what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to handle it differently than the way that you handled it before, just because you might have went through a certain other situation. And I was like, oh my God, this is what this is what had happened. But anyways, after that silly little argument, and John will tell you the story, it started to fade away. And I would say it's probably been a couple months since I've been like extremely sad. I mean, I'll get into a little funk here and there, but I've kind of found little quirky ways to get myself out of it. And I think like when I say like some days you are going to be in a funk, but the stuff that I was experiencing, and I think it was because of the situation that we went through and the different highs and the lows and the different environments that I was in that I've never been in. And then that whole situation just with, you know, the whole alcohol and stuff, like it made me deal with a lot of things that I needed to deal, not only like me and John needed to deal with together, but with myself. And I think what it was is like, it was a very traumatic event. I mean, even through that whole episode, like I even had post-traumatic stress disorder for quite a while.
We're going to have the podcast where we tell the story on this.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do that as the next podcast. How
Yeah.
about that?
But then
I want to give you guys a quick briefing of what happened. Me and her went on kind of like a 2-year drinking binge. And this is after we had stopped drinking for probably 8 years or something like that.
yeah.
I never remember. I'm not really good with the timelines and all that type of stuff. But we started drinking for a couple years, and I am the kind of person where I progressively get worse. Like I'll drink on the weekends, or one weekend, and then the next month I'll be doing 2 nights on the weekends, and then little by little, very very slowly but progressively, it turns into Tequila Tuesday, Thirsty Thursday, and then
It was a really bad snowball effect.
Yeah, next thing you know, I'm just drinking all the time.
Yeah.
And the party never stops with me. I'm probably the craziest person to ever go out and have a wild time with. And shit gets like really crazy. Like I literally almost got 300 people arrested 1 year. Like I literally had an entire bar follow me out into this in Florida at this big event. And like people were coming out from the neighbors, and we were having this big like outdoor event thing. And then the cop show. I mean, I literally bring the party. I get things going, right?
Yeah.
And that's the elusive part of it, because I'm on such a big high whenever I'm doing this kind of stuff. And the truth of the matter is, like, business and stuff like that was still going really well for me. So there wasn't nothing smacking me in the face going, fuck, dude, you're going in the wrong direction, other than like waking up feeling like shit and wondering who I offended that night before.
Yeah.
Getting in fights at different places, things like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, long story short, when it was 2 years ago in January,
Yeah.
had a wild night, ended up passing out in my Corvette and woke up in the ER room, and the cops found me out there sleeping in my car.
Yeah.
And they tried to pull me out, and basically
Everything went left.
I resisted, and they ended up beating the holy fucking shit out of me. And I was drunker than drunk. I'm glad I didn't drive, but I haven't had any drinks since. So they literally went and threw me in jail for a few days, and got out and haven't had a drink since. But we went through this whole 1 year debacle of dealing with the charges that were being pressed against me, which later got really dropped down to practically nothing.
Yeah.
But, there was a slew of other things, and it continued for like 1 solid year. So our 2019 was actually a really good year. But it was a year of like combat and survival for like the first half of it.
Yeah.
And the second half of it was just it was like coming back to normal, and then kind of launching into 2020 is when I wrote the book, The Marketing Savage. And I'm aware now, though. I'm fully aware. You know what happened to me is that years ago we used to drink, and at one point I realized that I had a big problem, and me and her ended up both quitting at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And later on, I started having some success and doing well. I thought that I would be a different person. I thought that, whatever, 8 years later, 10 years later, whatever it was,
Yeah.
that I could pick up and start drinking again, and it would be different, right? Because I wasn't that same young kid that was out there.
Different
trying to
mindset,
cause.
too,
I'm in a different mindset, right? And again, like I said, I had multiple events during the time. We flew all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
We were I was on lots of big podcasts. I was on my very first huge on-stage event. So there was a lot of like crazy highs during that time, right? And but a lot of big time lows as well, almost like what we were just talking about previous to telling this story. Okay, so that's number one. That's a briefing of the story. We really should tell the whole thing later.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Can we go deeper into that?
I don't care. I mean, might as well. We've already opened up. We've opened what, Pandora's box?
We did it on my Facebook wall. God, that was probably a year ago. We ended up doing it on my Facebook wall. Mm-hmm. We had to wait till all the shit was done and over with before we could talk about it.
Yeah, because attorney. It would. Yeah, just because of the whole situation.
And the amount of motherfuckers that would try to hem me up or whatever.
Well, yeah. What had happened is that the police officers that beat John up, they really they did it to the point to where they almost killed him. When I got John's medical records back and I seen the extensive amount of tests that they had to do on him to make sure that he was okay, that honestly never sat very well with me because, I'm thinking...
I think they opened up a superpower in my brain.
Well, I personally think as humans, when you have someone that has authority, you don't go that far.
You know what? I would honestly, I'm just telling you guys,
as humans.
Look, let me tell you guys something. I'm glad that it happened, and I'm glad that it happened to the extent that it did. And I'm glad that they beat the holy fucking shit out of me. I'm happy as can be that they did that. They should have done that. And I needed that in my life. I needed the fuck beat out of me. God knew what I needed. God knew that I needed the absolute dog shit kicked out of me to wake up and feel the way I did and deal with the situation I did. Nothing in that situation was wrong. Nothing was imperfect. In fact, every single piece of that situation, I believe, was perfect. I know she has a harder time struggling with that, but I look at it like this. What if I wouldn't have got beat up as bad and I would have been out of jail in, a couple hours? Would I have really looked at the scenario at the depth that I look at it today?
Probably not, because of how stubborn and hard-headed you are.
Right. I got exactly what I needed.
I guess it was just the hardest part is when I came to the hospital to see you. I'm just like...
Yeah, I was fucked up.
I mean...
I was disfigured. They said they had a really hard time getting handcuffs on me. Said, I'm a pretty big dude and they're trying to get in my hands and I'm not letting them.
I mean, the police officer that came out and spoke with me before bringing me back, I honestly believe that he was in shock. I knew... And he knew what they did. They overly did it. And I know it's because, if you look at John, he's this big guy. He's got a shitload of tattoos on him. He's not your typical clean-cut white boy.
And I was passed out in a brand new Corvette.
You know what I'm saying? And you're in the city of Dayton. And
they're rough, man.
And the crime is high. It was just it was just a very bad situation that went left. I look at it as John did wrong. I feel like the police officers overly did it. There was two wrongs, and then we hired our attorney, and he's the one that came in and he made it right.
Yeah, he made it right. But that being said, I always said that my mom came down from heaven and jumped in the one police officer's body, the one that really got me. And
you are known for
I could literally see
finding the light out of and making humor out of the situation.
I could literally see the one police officer.
I can totally see this too.
I could see the one that beat me up the worst. Literally after it was done and over with, look at the agents and go, "Why do I feel like an old woman?" I could literally see my mom looking down from heaven going, "Let me at him." I want to give his ass one more beat down.
Because here's the thing, John went through all the physical stuff, and he doesn't remember a lick of it. And I think I went through more of the emotional end of the whole situation. I mean, I was having post-traumatic stress disorder for that whole year and everything that I went through, because we would be going down to the attorney's office, or let's say we had to go to court or something. And as soon as we would get close to, the city, when you got into the city of Dayton, I seriously would start shaking and shivering, and my hands would go up. John would be driving down there, and my hands would go up to where I was almost kind of in a fetal position.
You know, I'll be honest with you guys. Like, I was like sketched out from like, I wouldn't worry about our police around here. I could drive by a policeman around here and something like that. But as soon as I got into inner city Dayton, I was just like, holy shit. Like I was sketched out around him for a minute. I mean, it probably took me a couple months before I started becoming cool when I was driving down there.
Yeah.
And just being around him, you know, because of, I think it just came down to how bad I was beat up that time. And then because I don't remember any of it, we got this lady that we used to do this thing called, was it EPT, I think is what it's called. Mm-hmm. She works out of my chiropractor's office. And
it's a holistic form of therapy.
Yeah. And she tells me that the reason why I don't remember it is because it was so traumatic because I thought that I was going to die. And she tells me that that I was really like majorly disappointed in my actions up until that day because I thought that I was going to die. And it was because I was going to leave her, you know.
Well, your ass didn't leave me, and you got yourself in check, and now look where you're
I think
at.
we're actually telling the story, aren't we?
Yeah.
I think this podcast just led into the story.
Which is perfectly
I still
fine
want
with
to tell
me.
the story about how you got mad at me, though. You know, earlier we were talking about how you got mad at me and you had this realization
Yeah.
and all this, right? Well, here's
Wait, hold on. I want to save that. I want to save that part. But one thing, okay, so like,
we'll have to save the sex scam.
yeah,
to
we'll
the next
save that
podcast.
till we'll say it till later. But here's the thing. So I had to go down to the jail to bail his ass out, which I've never done anything like that before, and I'm like nervous as hell.
That's a good woman
And
right
then,
there, fellas.
and
You got
then-
a woman that'll bail your ass out of jail?
And then when they let him out, so John was actually on house arrest for
Like 3 months?
3 months or yes.
2 or 3 months. I was I was told by the house arrest department that I was the most compliant house arrest person that they've ever met.
They listen.
They actually really liked me.
yeah,
there.
they loved John and they wanted the best for him.
Except for one dude in there, L.A.
Well, I think no. In all honesty, I think what it was is they probably read all the paperwork and seen what happened, and they were just like,
I think everybody did because
Yeah.
it was really easy to get the charges dropped, and they had no footage of what had happened. That's what I was hoping for, is that we had some footage of what had happened, so we could see it, but they had none. And
they
then,
had some at the very
and then
last.
what was kind of happening is the police officers weren't bringing anything to the prosecutor. So the prosecutor who's prosecuting me, it's literally a felony, assault on a police officer, and and then a DUI, right? And they're not bringing him anything. And the police officers really liked me, actually. I mean, they were super nice to me once they found out who I was.
Yeah.
And they knew that I had run charities in our cities and, you know, all this kind of stuff. They knew all these things about me by the time it was said and done. They even let her come in and visit me for like an hour. They didn't have to do that.
At the hospital.
At the hospital. They charged my cell phone on the way to the jail. They did not want to put me in jail. They tried to get the captain to drop the charges. The lieutenant. They tried to get him to drop the charges in the hospital. And they even went down to the tow place, got her the keys to my Corvette.
And how I found John was I knew his log information on when you like lose your iPhone, and I was like, why the hell is he at this hospital? And then I called there, and then that's when I found him and went down there.
Yeah. So, but anyhow, the cops were like really didn't want to move forward. In fact, the police officer in the hospital told me that it was probably going to get dropped. And I'm like, okay. And, you know, I mean, he's literally telling me, he goes, yeah, these will probably get dropped, man. There's no way this is going to stick. And so I'm like, okay. And then, you know, why don't we try to drop it? And they actually tried. And, but long story short, the police officers or the police department wasn't cooperating with the prosecuting office, meaning they weren't bringing them anything. They weren't bringing them any footage, any reports. Like my attorney was going and doing all that legwork and bringing everything to the prosecutor and bringing all the evidence up. And just little by little, my attorney's like, look, we need to get him off house arrest. And the prosecutor's like, I don't see why that's unreasonable. And it was probably a couple weeks later that my attorney says, you know, if we drop the felony, that's all I'm worried about. You drop the felony, drop the DUI down in operations, that's all I'm worried about. And he basically looked right at my attorney and said, I don't see why that's not reasonable.
Yeah, everything was kind of handled, I would say, more like on the DL, right?
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
So my attorney, the one that I hired, was an ex-prosecutor. So he was a magistrate from the court.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the sheriff's office wanted to come out to deliver my papers to me like they have to in person. But because my attorney's a magistrate, he took it out of their hands and says, give it to me. I deliver the paperwork to my own clients.
Yeah.
And I was able to deliver the paperwork to me. And he was like, John, they beat he was really on my side. And he's just like, John, they took it overboard. He goes, there's so many protocols they broke. They should have called medical and all this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so he basically he did this whole thing where I waived my rights to a speedy trial.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like a backdoor way to save the cities and the states a bunch of money and just get to the point. And I signed an agreement with between me, the prosecutor, and the judge and my attorney. And they dropped it down. Now, I was still tried in felony court because if it starts as a felony, even if they drop it down to misdemeanors, you're still going to be tried in felony court.
Yeah.
And which was weird because the judge didn't know the misdemeanor laws. So my attorney had to coach him on the whole thing during the process.
Goodness.
And he had to look off an iPad while he was reading what the misdemeanor laws, because we were literally up at the bench and he goes, I'm going to suspend your license for 6 months for the mandatory suspension. My attorney, I just look over at him. I see him start shaking his head and he's like, Your Honor, can I approach the bench? And so he goes and approaches the bench and they're talking. And I see my attorney mouthing it. It's not mandatory.
Yeah.
You do not have to give him 6 months. He has a business to run and all this kind of stuff. And the judge is just shaking his head. Oh, okay. Yeah. So he comes back out and the judge is like, well, I'm going to give you 90 days of, without your driver's license.
No, it was only 60.
Was it 60?
Yeah, it was only 2.
Okay, so it was 2 months compared to 6 months.
Yeah.
And that was just one of them things where the judge probably is up there and he just wanted to save a little face and say, you know what, I'm going to punish you a little bit anyway.
Yeah.
And then, I had to go through the typical shit that you got to go through on something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that, like, when we were there in court, I mean, John's, like, up there, and I'm sitting, in the, what's that little, wouldn't even know what area you would call that, but I'm sitting there, but, like, so John's there, and I'm sitting in the middle, and then here on the left-hand side, you have all these other men and women that are there that are in, because this is felony court. And I'm sitting here and I'm kind of like, I mean, my heart was racing. I mean, I was just to the point where I'm just like, and it was nothing against the people that were there that were, in jail. But the thing is like, I just don't know what you're in there for, and I'm
so
just freaking out.
They had people like, when you're in there, they have people that go in front of the judge that are in jail at the time.
Yeah.
So they had like a whole row of people that were actually in jail on one side, and then they had everybody who was in there to, I don't know, like
I guess they
either wait their turn. They had like pews that you sat in.
Yeah, that's what it would be. Pews. Yeah. They had pews that and I'm just like, man, this is just such a weird, fucked up environment that I'm in. Yeah. Like, I personally, there's no way in hell I would want to be a judge. There's no way in hell I would want to be a prosecutor. There's no way in hell I would want to be a lawyer. I just don't see how they can be in that environment every day. Like, it just, I mean, for me, it would like fuck with my head. I'm just like, there's no way I could do this shit.
So anyhow, we're getting close towards the end of the podcast. So I'm going to tell you guys a story about why she was so mad at me.
We're going to end it light and funny because this is what we normally do.
Yeah. So me and her we do these walks in the morning, or at least we used to.
Because John cannot
She injures
walk.
me all the time. I literally had to have my chiropractor adjust my foot.
You said
he
that
says that my foot has the sister of plantar fasciitis.
You said that on the last podcast, I think.
Yeah. So he, I go out one day with her, and I can't even walk on my damn foot the next day. Like literally, I don't know if you guys ever had plantar fasciitis. But if you ever had, you motherfuckers are shaking your head, yes. It feels like your fucking foot's broken. And that was coming on. It was like setting in.
Yeah.
And then I go to my chiropractor, and I didn't even think to say anything. He's just like, dude, are you limping?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, man, I got like that plantar fasciitis crap. He's like, well, we're going to have to adjust it. And I'm like, what? And he's like, oh, this is the fucking bomb diggity, bro. He's like, this is...
Did you have to take your sock off?
No, I don't think I took my sock off. No.
Thank God.
And he explained everything. He's like, well, he goes, this isn't plantar fasciitis, but it's its twin sister. And he went on to adjust my foot. And I'll be damned if I didn't go walking with her the next week and my left foot got it.
And John said, I cannot walk with you anymore.
Before that, we would go on these walks, right? And what I would normally do is in the morning, I'll drink like 2 to 3 cups of coffee. and possibly a bottle of water. So I've already pissed 3 times since I've been up, but I probably got to piss 4.
Yeah.
So we'll get off walking, and I know of this little spot of woods that's outside of our neighborhood that has trails and shit like
And
that.
I would get so bent out of shape every time.
Every time I said I had to pee.
Oh my God, I gotta pee. I'm like, dear God, really? You can't just hold it till we get home? No, if I don't go, I'm going to pee myself.
So we're walking. I tell her I'm going to pee. She goes, okay, well, I'm walking this way. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll be over here on this road over here. So you'll find me on this road. She's like, okay, but I'm walking this way. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So I go to pee. And I get down, and I'm walking up and down this road, right?
Yes.
And the name of the road is Baldwin, like Alex Baldwin. So I'm walking up and down Baldwin. And I told her before she left that I was going to make bird noises at her if I seen her.
And I told
I would
you
sound like
which
a bird.
way that I was going to walk, but I told you,
Well, I
said,
had to
I
pee
don't.
so bad I couldn't fucking process anything you were
And then
saying.
I told you, I said, I do not know these street names by heart. So this
you
is
knew
where
Baldwin, and I told you that's where I was going to be.
I told you I was not going to be on Baldwin.
So long story short, I'm walking up and down Baldwin, okay, and I see her from a distance.
No, you think you see me
I
from
think
it.
that I see her from a distance, but it's another lady wearing the same color shirt from way far away.
I had a black coat on, and for
And
some
she
reason,
was wearing-
John thought I had a black sweatshirt on.
Yes. So I'm following this lady from a distance making bird noises through our community.
Oh, you're a dork.
I'm doing things like ka-ka-ka, ka-ka-ka.
Oh,
And you can just
shit.
hear it echoing through this community. And as I'm chasing this person around, I'm like, well, shit, she's going this way. Well, she's probably making a right up here because I know how she normally walks because I think this is my wife.
Yeah.
So I'll go the left, and then I'll walk straight, and then I'll find her.
Mm-hmm.
We'll run into each other. So as we're walking, I see her in a distance. I start making some bird noises, thinking I'm going to see my wife's smiling face. I get a little closer, and I realize it's not her. And I'm like, fuck, this lady thinks I've been chasing her around making bird noises. And I'm like, okay, well, I need to turn around and walk the other way, right?
Yeah.
So I turned around and walked the other way, and then I'm like, well, I wonder which way she went. So I started going down all the streets, and then I was like, I was doing 75 hard at the time, so I'm like, well, I might as well do my second workout.
Well, the thing is I walked back up to the wooded area where you peed, and you were nowhere to be found. And then I walked up towards Baldwin and looked both ways and did not see you. And I'm just like,
So I'm like, now listen, so I'm
just
like,
where the fuck did he go?
so basically I'm thinking, I'm like, well, she's just going on an extra long walk. She probably went clear up down the road like she normally does, walked out by the Catholic church and up down BP and all this stuff. I'm going to catch her on
No.
the other side by going this way.
I never told you I was going to walk that
Well,
way.
I get all the way down this way. She's nowhere to be found. I mean, so I come back and I walk back where we were at. I walk back around a couple places, and I'm like, this is probably like it's going to end up being my second workout. I'm going to have 2 workouts done at a time, right? So I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm going to head back home now because I'm going to get in my car and I'm going to go try to find her. So I go and I start walking home, and I cut through the woods that I peed in originally.
Yeah.
And I come out the other side, and I walk down a couple roads, and I'm about a block away from my house, and there she is.
I was already home, and I sat on the front porch because
she was madder.
John locked
than-
the door, so I couldn't get in. So I sat there for like 15 minutes, and then I took off walking again, and I walked down weathered woods. And the next thing you know, I turn around, and there's John.
She was so mad.
Yeah.
And she was just like yelling at me. And
I
I'm
was
like,
hot.
well, when I seen her, I was just like, hey, oh my God, we found each other. And she's like, rah, you never listen to me. You never hear anything that I say. Everything I say, you don't listen to. Everything you hear, you don't hear what I say. And I'm just like, whoa. I'm like, hold on there. I was coming to get you.
It brought up a lot of old feelings. That's what it did. And instead
She said I abandoned her.
Yeah,
when
that's
I
how
spent
I
that whole
felt.
time trying to find her.
I know, but that's how it felt. It brought up a bunch of weird feelings from the past, and when we got home, I'm like crying and yelling at, not horribly yelling, but like crying and yelling at John.
She was mad. Mm-mm.
No, I've been a lot. It's been a lot worse than that, but
So I did what I do best. I put up my force field.
your force.
My bad vibe force field.
Well, no,
I
here's
threw
the
it
thing.
on full effect.
I had a little meltdown, but then the next day when I was on my walk in the morning, I was listening to a book, and boom, it's like, this is what it was like. God was saying, Angela, this is how you should have handled it. Angela, next time, this is how you need to handle it. And I was like, Damn.
Oh, and here's the funny
That's
thing.
how I
So
need to handle
she
it.
got this habit where she'll never go out with her cell phone. So I was trying to call her cell
No,
phone.
when I'm with you out
Yeah,
walking,
so
if it's
I was-
me, I always have my phone with
You know,
me.
all she had to do is sit by them woods and wait for me for literally 3 minutes or less.
But I
But
was
she
being
decided
stubborn. I was
that
being
she
stubborn.
needed to take off.
I was being stubborn. I'm stubborn too. I will admit that. I am stubborn too. I'm not as hard-headed
So if
as
you guys think that sometimes you get in arguments about dumb shit, well, we're not exempt from this.
But that
We are
happens.
right with you.
But that happens. Like, what couple? Like, how can a couple say, be like, we never argue? And I'm just like, man, you so fucking full of shit. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
argues.
I'll tell you, one time we pulled up to we were gonna go to my son's school one day, and I called her not a B word, but I called.
This was a
I called her.
long time ago.
I told her, I was like, you're acting like a witch, and she looks at me and she goes, "Oh yeah, well you're the one with the pointy nose." And she gets out of the car and goes into the school
To get his
Here's
homework,
the
'cause he
funny
was
thing.
sick.
Here's the funny thing. So when she comes back and gets in the car,
And we had a
she looks at
Mustang
the
at the
rear
time.
view mirror and she sees the rear view mirror pointing towards me. So I was looking at my nose and I forgot to put it back in place and we just lost it laughing.
Yeah, it was
We
such
just
a,
lost it
yeah,
laughing.
there was tension there. And then, like, when I get back in the car, I'm like, why is the mirror look at this? I'm like,
Why is
oh
it
my
pointing
God.
down at you?
John was looking at his nose. I'm like, John is like looking at his nose. He's like looking at it and he's like, do I really have a witch's nose?
I'm like, it ain't that pointy. Like
Yeah.
maybe it is a little bit.
Yeah, but before we end the podcast, because I know we're like, this has been a little one lengthy one. Inky Johnson wrote, he said something, I think it's so true, and I don't have the exact quote that he said, but he basically said that, like, when you go and weather through a storm, you're definitely going to come out like, wait a minute, see, I'm butchering it. Basically, when you're going through a storm, at the end of the storm, and when you come out as a different person. And I feel that the situation that we went through, a couple years ago, and it lasted that long, that I came out a different person. Not in a bad way, but in such a good way. Because one of the major things that I told myself and I told everybody is, like, in that situation, don't get me wrong, there was some anger, but I worked through that. But I was not going to let it harden me as a person. Because I'm like, in all honesty, I'm a happy-go-lucky, full of life, dorky individual. Normally I always have a smile on my face. And I was like, I'm just not going to come out, a hardened person. I'm not going to let it harden my heart.
Maybe remember that time I told everybody at Apex how you farted in the elevator?
You weren't supposed to tell people that.
And with that, we are going to close the show. And she didn't even wait till the elevator got to the bottom to fart in it. As soon as we got in there, she farted in it.
I knew it was safe at that time.
Oh, God, yeah, for you.
Yeah, but then there was that time when we were at Apex and you didn't want to take a poop in the restroom upstairs on that same floor. So we went to the bottom floor and where a secret restroom was, and you went in there and took a shit.
That is a little weird.
If you're going to tell everybody that I farted in the
you know what?
elevator,
I will
you went and
admit-
found a secret bathroom
Look,
and took a shit in there.
I will admit that if I'm on a floor with 50 people and people are going in and out of the restroom all the time, I do not want to be the dude in there stinking that motherfucker up. I did that out of respect. Because if I would have shit in that restroom, every single person that would have went in there afterwards would have been fucking my bitch.
Yeah, and then they probably would have came up with some funny nicknames too.
Oh, yeah. They would have been, they would
You'd
have
be
been.
like stinky
I would have
ass.
dominated each and every one of them with my peef.
Your dad,
No, honestly.
your dad
That's how
always
much
said-
I respect these members.
I know, but your dad said that you would always shit like a wildcat. And then, the stench would always get in his coats or something like that. And he'd be outside and it would be right with him.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's a hot mess.
I'm proud of that stuff. I don't run away from it. I accept it. Yeah.
Well, I think it's because you're a man.
Hey.
It's probably easier.
Most dominant man has the most dominant poop, too. Remember that. All right, everybody.
I know.
So we're going to go ahead and check
And
out
I'm the
of
one
this podcast.
scrubbing it out off the toilet.
Yeah, I told you we'd be laughing. Didn't I tell you when it got
Yes,
so serious
we
we'd be
always
laughing in
do.
20 minutes?
Yeah, that's what we do.
All right, y'all. Appreciate you for coming along.
Coming
Marketing
along.
Revolution Podcast.
And remember, it's all about the motherfucking hustle.
Whoop, whoop.
Bang, bang.